Hey guys, welcome back to another Unreal Engine 4 Blueprint tutorial. We're back working on our Kitten cannon clone. Where we left off on the last tutorial, we were able to get both the power meter and the cannon itself to rotate and move up and down for the power meter. Let me just jump in and show you. Right now we have it going from 0 to 60 on its own. You can click it to lock in, and the same thing goes with power, and you can kind of click and unclick, do all that good stuff. So some things I've made in terms of changes to what you guys saw in the last tutorial, just so you guys are caught up here. I moved the power meter and the cannon onto the y-axis so that they're both at y0, and they're both facing the player spawn, the camera here. I also added the player start, and in the world settings, under game mode, I added the KC_player camera to our default pawn class, and I checked override world gravity, set the global gravity Z to 0, just so when we spawn in, the camera just doesn't fall. And I also rotated the directional light that we had placed in, just so we were able to see the text there. So make sure you make those changes before we continue. But what we're going to work on now is the first part about establishing our cannonball, the actual projectile that's going to be fired off. We're just going to do some basic setup. We're going to, not going to do any major scripting yet. We're just going to have everything in place just so we can move forward that in other tutorials. So the cannonball that I have is just a ridiculous sprite animation of myself and my roommates, our heads, kind of just for fun, set up that way. So what we need to do is I'll just import only one sprite in their animations, and I'll walk you through on how to make that animation. So let me go ahead and right-click in my textures folder. Grab him. And all these textures are PNGs in a power of 2. So I have T_Turi and then T_Turi01. Now what we can do is make sprites from them. So let's right-click under miscellaneous. Let's do sprite. We'll do sprite underscore cannonball 01. And duplicate that. Change it to 02. So it's sprite underscore cannonball 02. Double click on both of them to open them up. And then we can go into our textures folder and just plug them up here. And there we go. Now to make an animation of this, what we can do is go into our sprite folder, right click, go to animation, and sprite flipbook. I call this FB for flipbook, and then we can just do Terry. So FB underscore Terry. Double click on that. And it's basically going to ask how many frames it's going to be. For him, it's only 2 frames, so we can just do 1 and 2. And then it's going to be asking for sprites, so let's add in those sprites. So sprite 1. Right now it's kind of seizure-y, but if we add in sprite 2, we got him animating, but we want to slow this down a little bit, just so it looks more ridiculous. It's just for fun, but that's basically how you add animations there. You can also add a collision source to it. We don't really need to do that for this, but let's go ahead and save that. But now that we have the actual flipbook set in place and working correctly, we can actually create a blueprint for the cannonball. So let's right-click Blueprint Class, Actor, BP underscore cannonball. You can double-click on that. As usual, I will go down to our scene utility here, make that the root, and name it root. Now we can add, let's go ahead and add our flipbook. So let's go to sprites and then flipbook, click on that. And then right there, paper flipbook. We'll leave the name alone, but we got it animating like it should. Next, let's add some collision to it. So what we can go to is our components. We'll do a capsule collision, and we'll name it collision. It's kind of hard to see, but we just need to change its half height and its radius so that it encompasses the whole thing. That looks good. Compile that. For its actual collision, let's do simulation generates hit events, and leave everything else alone. Now what we need to do, because this is going to be a projectile that we want to have a velocity for, we're going to add a projectile movement component. So under movement, we'll do projectile movement. We'll leave the name alone. We don't need to name anything really fancy. And what we're going to do for projectile gravity scale, for right now, we'll leave that at 0. Just because we'll change that in the actual scripting. We have to do anything like that. And the other thing that I have that I want to go ahead and do is I have an audio for when it actually impacts anything. It's like a bang noise, just like psh noise. So I want to import that. So let me go ahead and create a new folder, call it audio. And just go right click, import, and sounds. And that's the one I want. And I'm going to right click, create queue. I call them SC underscore impact. I'll call cannonball impact. And now with this sound cue created and highlighted, we can just go in, go to audio, add SC underscore cannonball impact. And then in that, we want to make sure that auto activate is turned off. And volume multiplier, we'll just make that 2. And the last thing we're going to do is just put collision under FB Terry, and so is SC Cannon Impact, just so they're parented to FB Terry. That way, if we move, those two move with them. So that's basically all the components that we're going to add. So now we're ready to start scripting here. So let's go into our event graph. And one thing we're going to make sure we want to go ahead and we're going to take into consideration the fact that we want to track the distance that the cannonball has traveled. So what we're going to do is create a new variable. Call it cannon distance. It's going to be a float. By default, it's going to be 0. But we're just going to make sure if the event can begin play that it's set to 0 as well. And now we're going to get some references here. We want to get a reference to our cannon, just because they're going to be talking to each other when we actually fire the cannonball. So let's pull from the set here. We'll do get all actors of class. And then we'll find BP cannon. And then out actors, we'll do a get. And then cast that to BP cannon. Plug that up. And then as BP cannon, we'll promote that to a variable. We'll call this cannon reference. So now we have a reference to our cannon. What we're going to do now is basically, I don't know if you've seen this tutorial, it's from Peter Newton, where the camera kind of follows the player. And there's like interpolation, depending on how fast and slow you want it to go. We're actually going to create and spawn a new camera so that it tracks the player and follows the player properly. So to start that, we're going to right click, we're going to get the player character, and then cast to KC underscore player camera. Because right now our character class that we created at the very start, it's just a camera. So if we open up the full blueprint editor, actually right now there is no camera in there. We don't really need one, but we're going to add one right now. So to do that, what we can do is add a component. We're going to add a camera boom. Forget what that's actually called. So let's look. Oh yeah, it's a spring arm component. So we'll add a spring arm component. We'll call it camera boom. And we'll set its target arm length to 200. and everything else is going to remain the same. Now we can add our camera, and we'll just call this player camera, and then we'll child that to our camera boom. And that's pretty much all we need to do. But for the player camera, for location, right now it's set to 200. We'll set that to 0, just so it's at the end of the length of our camera boom. So that's all we need to do to our actual character class. So let's go back into our cannonball. And from as KC_player camera, we'll call this player camera reference. So we'll promote that to that variable. Now what we can do now is grab our player camera reference, get from that our camera, so get player camera, and then from that, what we're going to do is get the world transform, and now we're just going to right click and do spawn actor. From class, it's going to be a camera actor. Plug that up, and now it's asking for a spawn transform. So we're going to give it that world transform of our player camera. So basically, we're getting our camera's world position transform, which is our location, our rotation, and scale. We're going to use that to spawn a brand new camera actor, and from here, we're going to promote a new variable calling it new player camera. And then we want to do a couple things because this new camera needs to have some preset values to it. First, we're going to grab the new player camera. We're going to get its camera component. And then, first we want to make sure that constrain aspect ratio is false. So we're going to set that to false. If we don't, you're going to see black bars on the top and bottom, unless you change the aspect ratio yourself. But we don't want to do that. We just want to make sure it's off, just so we get the full screen view. And now what we can do is basically tell this new camera to tell it to look at the player cannonball, which is going to be the player controller. So we'll do new player camera. I believe we could just do set view. No, we need to first get the player controller. So let's do get player controller. Then pull from the set view target with blend. Plug that up. So the new target, or the new view target, will be our new player camera. And then everything else, all the properties here can be left alone. No changes need to be made. And then we're going to attach this to our cannonball. So FB_Terry. So let's go ahead and grab an attach to. We'll do an FB Terry. Actually, let's do it this way. Let's grab FB Terry and then do attach to. But we're going to have to switch things around. FB Terry is going to be the in parent. And then we're going to grab our player camera reference. Then we're going to grab the player camera. And we're going to make that the target. And then the attach type, we're going to do keep world position. And then world stimulated bodies will remain checked. And socket name, that's going to stay the same as none. We're going to have this, because right now I want to make sure we're able to see the cannonball. But I'm going to have this in place just so we can add it later. What we can do here is get FB Terry and set its visibility. We're going to make sure it's not plugged into anything yet, but it's good. This is all we're going to do. We're going to make sure that it's invisible at start just so you don't see it. But for right now, we're going to have it visible just so you guys can see it. Now, what we can do is get the player camera reference, player camera here, get its world location. We can right click, split struct pin here. We don't really need to, we can just recombine that actually. And then let's grab our new player camera, get its camera component, and then set its world location. So basically now we're setting the location of our new camera to the location of the first camera here. So let's just plug that up. Let's save enough room so we can put the set visibility in there relatively simple enough. And then let's just plug in that world location. And now we need to change its projection mode. Basically, you want to have it orthographic just so it gets that 2D feel. So let's just copy the new player camera component. Let's get its projection mode. We're going to set it. Set perspective. It's going to be orthographic. Let's plug that in. And then we're also going to set its ortho width to 1536. That way we can see everything in the game world. And that's all we need to do starting with event begin play. This is everything that's going to be initialized. But now what we need to do, right now we don't have to do too much. Let me go ahead and compile. Let's see what happens when we try to play. Let's add our cannonball. You can see that it's kind of big. So let's change its scale to maybe 0.25. That's still big. Let's try 0.15. That works. Let's put it right there. And now if we play, right now we see it's there. Not much is happening, obviously, just because we haven't added any kind of main behavior. But what we can do now, let's go ahead. Let's open up our cannon. So we'll do its viewport. Let's add another component here. It's going to be an arrow. And we'll call this cannonball spawn point. Let's put that right there. And let's attach it to the cannon base. And now what we can do in our construction script, let's not do it in the construction script. Let's go ahead and do it at the event begin play. At the end here, let's get FB_Terry. Let's do set world location. And then what we can do here is get the cannon reference. We can do get cannon. We're looking for spawn point. And then we can get world location. We can just plug that up. Now if we play, we should see the cannonball kind of rotate with everything. I guess not. Let's try get relative location. Still not working. This may need to be done in the event tick. Let's try getting to the tick here. Plug that up. There we go. So now, whenever we launch it, it'll look like it's coming out of the cannon. So that's perfect. That's the way we want it. And that's going to be the end of this tutorial. The next one we're going to go more into the cannonball. What we're going to do is set up the camera so that it follows the actual cannonball to the point where we set that interpolation up so we can kind of see that transition so that it's following it. We're going to work on the projectile movement. Not too sure if we'll be able to get into firing the cannonball just yet. That may be the next tutorial or the one that follows that. So stay tuned for that. If anything, we may do that first in the next tutorial and then add some properties moving forward. But for now, again, I just want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching that Unreal Engine 4 Blueprint tutorial. If you enjoyed the content and you aren't already subscribed, click on me or the subscribe button above to see more videos like this. This is going to be a pretty big series, maybe 10 to 15 episodes, depending on what we can get done in a certain amount of time. If you like the content, hit the like button, comment with your suggestions if you have any questions. Also share the video just so more people can see it, more people can get it out there, we can build our community even more. And if you want to see more videos, we can look to the right. There's more blueprint examples, there's more blueprint tutorials you guys can check out. And there's even more for Unreal Engine 3 or UE4 for you guys to see. But for now, again, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.